Hi, I'm Jill Hoffman, a former assistant professor turned stay-at-home parent. And although academia was not for me, at least as a faculty member, I loved figuring out how to capture and organize all of the different things on my plate, like teaching, research, service, and just general administrative stuff. During my time as a professor, I tried a bunch of different tools, Asana, Todoist, ClickUp, paper planners, Dynalist, the old Google Tasks. I can't remember what it was called, maybe just Google Tasks. And nothing stuck until I used Notion, which is what I still use today for my personal life. And on my website, I've written a bit about how I've used Notion, and over the years, I've gotten a lot of questions about it. So I wanted to create a series of videos that shows the setup of my Notion dashboard that I used as a faculty member, at least the final version of it as it's evolved over the years. I also wanted to walk through how I created it. If you'd like to create it yourself, you can. If you're not a fan of all the setup that goes into creating a Notion dashboard, it's also available for purchase, which I will link below. So here we have the main page of the weekly dashboard, and I like to have one spot where I can find everything that I need to find for the week, as well as kind of a snapshot of the month. And before I kind of dive into what's on this page, I guess it might be helpful to briefly talk about how I think about my work as a professor, like how I organize it. So I have what I call these like really broad buckets, which are like the main areas where I would spend my time as a professor. And for me, those buckets would be research, teaching, service, and then just like general administrative things. Within each of those buckets would be the projects that I'm working on. So in teaching, a class that I'm teaching would be a project. Or if I was developing a course, that would be a project. In research, any of the research projects I was working on would be a project within the research bucket. I would also have a bucket for like research development, development of like new ideas, and new projects, or potentially a bucket for building collaborations, research collaborations, service, whatever like service opportunities I was participating in would have its own project. And then administrative stuff are really varied. When I went on parental leave after my second daughter was born, I had like a leave project within administrative stuff. And then within each of the projects, there are to-dos for each project that I'm, working on a regular basis. Generally speaking, every task or to-do will fit in with a project, which will fit in with a bucket. And if there was ever an instance where something like didn't fit, I would potentially add like a other bucket or an other project or like a one-time task project or something like that. But I essentially turned everything I was working on into some sort of project and then fit it into one of the buckets. And then all of the projects have tasks associated with them. So that's kind of how I think about it overall. And this example that you see here is the one that you can purchase or an iteration of the one you can purchase. This is not what my actual dashboard looked like, just because there's a bunch of stuff in there that I didn't want to have to blur out. So this is just an example, but we'll give you a sense of what it looked like. So obviously all these things up here, like the start here, would not be here for my own personal dashboard. But at this section here, I've got a bunch of toggle little lists that I really like using in Notion because you can put a lot of information in and not make the page too long. And so this first toggle is for emails. And if you notice, as I like hover my mouse over it, it's outlined in red. It's a synced block, so it occurs in other places within my Notion space. And whenever I put anything in here, it automatically syncs across all the different areas. And so the purpose of this is essentially like if I Either if I'm on like this main page of the dashboard and I know that I need to write a new email, like respond to somebody, and it's like not substantial enough that it needs to be like its own task, like it's going to take like under, 10 to 15 minutes, I would just add it here so that at the end of the day or whenever like my next email block, because generally I would answer emails at like a point in the morning, afternoon, and then before I'd be done for the day, I would go in here and check these off. For things that were more emails that were more substantial, I would generally add those in as a task within specific projects, but you can add them in here. And then there's other project pages or like meeting note pages where this synced block will show up. So if you're in a meeting, you're taking notes within this space, you can add an email in the meeting notes and they'll also show up here. So when you're kind of reviewing at the end of the day, you can come back to those emails and then not forget about them. There's a couple of like new toggle things. So new resources, new research ideas, new to-dos, new notes. And so these are spaces where you can add new things to each of these separate databases. So there's a database in this dashboard that is for resources. So if you have like a teaching resource that you want to save, you can click on this button and add it there. If you have a new research idea, you can add it here to your research pipeline, like the idea section of that. And I'll walk through all of these databases separately, but just want to give you an overview of what is included on this beginning part. So again, like pressing that plus new and then adding in the new research idea. New to do, same thing. If a new task comes up, you can type them here and then you can drag them into this table down here and then we'll add in a new task. So if I type in new task and then drag this down here, it gets added down here and you can organize the new to-dos here. And there's a filter set up so that anything that shows up here either doesn't have a project or doesn't have a bucket. The bucket, let's see, whoops. Bucket column is over here. And so once they get both assigned to a project and a bucket, they will disappear and go into another space where you can find it, but just won't be in this new to-dos here. So this is just kind of how you capture them and organize them initially. And then notes, same thing. You can add new notes here. And then I would use some different note templates. So there's meeting notes, research article notes, and like a revise and resubmit template that you could use that I found helpful kind of throughout my work to have these different templates available in Notion. And then I also like to just have easy access to the different databases that are included. So if I am on this page and I want to go into the projects database, I can just click on that here and it'll take me to the projects. And then the final thing that I like to do or include whenever like in any of my kind of like task management, scheduling, kind of project management type systems that I use, I really like to create like a checklist that I can go through each week just to remind me of what I need to do, because I often do my planning, or at least when I was faculty, I would do my planning for the week Friday afternoon. So that's typically like when I'm at my lowest in terms of just like energy and mental capacity. And so having a list of like, okay, here's what I need to do. I need to review the to-dos and events in the to-do today and to do this week's section. And then here are the like very specific things that I will be working on during my planning time. And so I just go through and check these off as I review all the things that I worked on in the past week. And this just kind of helps me stay kind of like on task to what I'm doing and not kind of get sidetracked by new things that I could do. I would find that my planning process would kind of evolve over time and based on kind of my own personal needs. And so having this checklist would be helpful if like I switch something up, just to remind myself of that. And honestly, I often would like forget oh, what do I do? What do I do next? So this is helpful for that. And then I sometimes use these, I sometimes don't. It's like a little template button here. So if you click this, it will add a whole new set of these checklists. So if you like go through, check it all off, and you don't want to uncheck them, you can just click this little plus new weekly planning checklist and it'll create a whole new one. You can delete the other stuff. And so I never found that particularly, I don't know. I found it like easy if I check these off to just highlight and check, and then they all uncheck. So I think they both work. I think I prefer to just use the same one over and over again, but sometimes people like to create a fresh new one. So the rest of the weekly dashboard has like different views of the tasks or the to-dos that are happening throughout like whatever week it is. And then so these kind of top things to do today, to do this week, done this week, to do next week are all pertaining to tasks for the week. Waiting also relates to tasks, not necessarily from the week, but anything that like you're waiting on. And then project to-dos are your tasks organized by project. And then the calendar shows a calendar view of your different tasks. So if I open up to do today, and you'll see just some like random examples in here of different tasks, but this includes any task that has today's date or previous, because maybe you didn't necessarily get it done on the day that you said you were going to do it. So anything again with today's date or the day or any day previous will show up here, so you know what you're working on today. And then I also would like to show the tasks, like the specific tasks that I'm working on, as well as any events that might be happening that day. So I have tags for each of the tasks that show what, like if it's an event or not. And so if you take a look in the filters, again, use this like on or before today that shows up in both to do today or events today. And then in this particular view, you're seeing of your to-do list or your to-do database, if a task has a tag that contains either like other event, class, conference, meeting, it'll show up as an event versus a task. So that just kind of helps you differentiate between the two and see them a bit separately. So you've got two views in this today one. And then to do this week, you'll see anything you're working on today, as well as anything else that's coming up for the week. So this filter shows you anything that has a tag of this week. So in Notion, I would always have issues with like using dates with the particular week. And so I just got tired of trying to figure out like how to make dates work in this particular view. And I just added a tag that says like, okay, I'm working on it this week. And then each week during my planning process, I update the tags for this week or next week. And that worked really well for me. And it also kind of helped me to see like, okay, here's what I did this week. Here's what I didn't get to from this week that I need to push to next week or a different week. And so it just kind of was a helpful way of being more aware of the different things I was working on each week. So yeah, so filters wise, if a task has a tag of this week, it will show up either in the to-dos or the events for the week. And then done this week, I think it's also important to remember like, oh, I did some things during the week, because sometimes I feel like we can get to the end of the week and be like, what did I actually do? And this is a nice way to say like, oh, here is what I actually did because I forgot. So it'll show you the tasks that you did or the to-dos that you did, as well as any events that you went to. And this is helpful, particularly at the end of the week too, to kind of review the things that you did and progress that you made. And then to do next week, I would include here anything that I was going to work on during the next week. And so as part of my planning process, I would add a next week tag to anything that I plan to do in the next week. And so anything with the next week tag will show up here, either as a task or an event. And so nothing's showing up in the events, but we've got one example task here. And then waiting tasks. So there's statuses for tasks that you can update. Anything that has a waiting status gets added here. So I use this a lot with students, like if they were going to turn an assignment late, or if I was waiting for somebody if I was working on like a research paper and I was waiting for somebody's edits. But I knew, like, here's the thing I have to do. Like, I have to grade this paper, or I have to add my own portion into this paper. I can't do it yet because I'm waiting on somebody else, but I still want to be aware, like, hey, this is coming up and I need to potentially make space for it during like this week or next week, maybe. And so it would just sit here, and during my weekly planning process, I would take a look at kind of the things I was waiting on. It also is helpful for like following up with people if, it's been a little bit of time or it's past the day when they said they would have it back to you by whatever it was. You can make a note to follow up and see where they're at, and if you're going to get it back anytime soon. So the project to-dos shows all of your project or your to-dos, your tasks, organized by project. So we've got a research project 1 here. Again, these are all just examples. Got a third-year review project. That's a task, got a name to it. We've got a class here, and then anything that doesn't have any projects attached to it will show up here. So any projects that you have created will be organized here, and you'll see all the tasks associated with them that you're working on. So we take a look at the filter. The status for the task is you haven't started it, it's on hold, you're waiting, in progress. So anything that is done, or I believe inactive, I think is the other one, does not show up here. So it's a nice way to see all of the things, really all of the tasks or to-dos or events related to a particular project in like one space. So like, here's all the things I have to do for this research project. Here's all the things I have to do for my third-year review, etc. So I would use this again during my weekly planning process to kind of see, like, what should I work on next, or what do I need to work on next if it has like a specific due date. And then finally on this page, we've got a calendar. And it's interesting, like when I was a professor, it would generally be in the table view more. Now that I am using it for more like personal use, I find I'm in a calendar a lot more, because this is kind of generally speaking how my personal dashboard is set up. You could see all of your tasks that have a date on the calendar. They'll show up here. And so this is the first one is like the to-dos, the tasks show up here. And then this one will show you the events that are happening. And then it'll show you, this third one is everything. And they're looking at slightly different months. So here's February. This one is showing March. This one is showing March. That's why they're looking slightly different. And then you can see anything that doesn't have a specific date here. But again, this I think is helpful for seeing like what's going to be a busy week. Where is there like a lot of stuff piled up, or what's going to be a light week, which is helpful when trying to make decisions about what you're going to do. If somebody comes to you with something new, you can take a look at your calendar and say like, this is not going to work out this week because of X, Y, and Z. So it just gives you a nice overview of the things that you are doing. Okay, so this is the buckets database, and I wouldn't actually like use this database much. It really just helps for like organizational purposes, as well as if you want to filter tasks by like all tenure related tasks or all teaching related tasks. It just helps with like being able to view, organize projects, tasks in these different areas. And there's two views, there's gallery view here. And for me, I would use, so I had, as a faculty member, I would would use tenure, admin, teaching, service, and research. And then I did not use Notion as a grad student. I don't know if Notion was around when I was a grad student, but perhaps it was. I didn't know about it then, but if you're taking classes, that is what you could use as a bucket for that. And then there's also a table view too, so you can kind of see, like, here are all the to-dos that are associated with this particular bucket. Here are all the projects associated with it. Here are the resources or the tags that are connected to it. And you know what? I think that I added in notes into the final version of this that I have for sale. So I believe the notes database also shows up here as well. So the projects database shows all of your different projects that you might have. We've got a table view here, as well as a gallery view, depending on what you want to see. With each project, you give it a name and its associated bucket, and then any to-dos associated with it will show up here. And then it also shows you like the percentage complete. And this is just based on the tasks that are assigned to it and the tasks that you have completed. So not a perfect representation of like the completeness of a project, but that's one way to kind of think about that. It also shows you when you last edited this project page, which I think I find helpful to remember, like, oh, I haven't like looked at this in X number of days, or I wrote, like, if I can't remember if I did something or not, it's nice to go back and look at the dates on this. And then it also has, you can give it like a different status, like, all right, if it's in the planning stages or if it's in progress or I'm waiting for something, you can add files and media to it. And then it can connect to your research pipeline potentially. And there are a couple of different templates. Like whenever I would create a new project, I would, depending on if it's like a research project or a class, I might include different things. So I had different templates for that. So let's take a look at this project template. And so this one, just like a new general project template, includes like you can put the project goal or purpose, why you're working on it, kind of help you connect to like the larger view of the project here. And then there's a bunch of toggle menus here that I'll go through. So we've got collaborator contact info. If I was working with any collaborators on the particular project, especially for research projects, I might include their contact info here, just so I have it all in one space if I need to find like phone number or something and I didn't have it elsewhere. It's just a helpful spot to capture all that information. And that's just like a simple table, nothing special about that. And then this will show all of the to-dos and events that are associated with this particular project. And so you can type in to-dos here and then drag them into this to-do list here. And that will automatically add whatever project it is. I'm not going to do it in here because this is a template, but I can show you in one of the example projects over here, but it'll automatically add the project to the task. And then there's also a project calendar, so you can see like anything that has a date will show up here and show you like when you're working on something or when an event is coming up. So it can be helpful for seeing a calendar just for a particular project and not anything else. Project notes. Any of the notes that are associated with this particular project will show up here, and you can add new notes. There are some templates here that I will show you when I talk about the notes, but this is another space to add new notes that will automatically be lumped with the particular project you're working on. Same thing with the resources, any sort of resources that are connected with the project show up here. And then your research pipeline will show up here as well. And anything that's related to this particular project will show up in the different parts of your research pipeline, whether that's an idea or a draft proposal or something that's under review, funded or accepted, data collection, data analysis, and methods. And then kind of it's almost ready to go, under review, R&R, R&R under review. And then there is impress published, and then no status. So anything, again, associated with this project will show up here. And then let's go back to, let's see, open up this research project and see what I have in there. So if I were to add new research to do, drag it down here, you can see that it shows up there and then it's automatically tagged with this research project. In the projects, you would need to go in and add a bucket to it. So add research to that. And then, if you were working on it, whenever you could add in the date, add a tag if it was necessary. Go back a page. And I'll just open up the calendar. And so you can see the one task here showing up. We're in the month of February here. So it's showing one task that's in progress. Let's see, do I have any resources? So there's an example resource here that shows up in like a list format, any notes, 2 R&Rs, using the R&R template, anything with the pipeline. Don't think so. Oh, no. Okay. All right, I'm going to close this out and then take a look at the class template. Actually, let me just go into the actual class thing here. So for the class template, or for the class like project page, essentially I have a spot where you can enter in like basic course details. So what the class name is, when you meet, what times you meet, where the location is, office hours, times and dates. A spot to enter in just like basic student information, if that's helpful in like a table format. Honestly, it would depend on the class. Like sometimes I would have it in another space, not in Notion, but sometimes if like I would have to do site visits for internships when I was a faculty member, and for that, because that involved a lot of like logistics and like planning and to-dos and things like that, that's when I had kind of some like first name or like initials in Notion. I'm not quite sure what law is that for about information and what Notion's deal is with that. So you might want to check in on that before you start putting in anything too sensitive within Notion, but that's here if it's helpful. It also includes like course specific to-dos or events. One of the statuses that I would use a lot, especially for classes, is this inactive status. And so like with a class, I would find that I was doing like the same tasks over and over again. And then, once the term ended, I wouldn't do them, but then the next year I do the same thing. And so I would save all of the tasks that I did and I just mark them as inactive so that I didn't have to like recreate everything in Notion, and I could just go in and like remove inactive when I was ready to teach the class again. And that was really helpful in just like saving time and mental space for like setting up the course and whatnot. Also, like a calendar view of the course to-dos and events that show up here. I would use this for like course planning. So this is like not connected to any other databases. This just like sits here for this particular course. And I would use it to show like, okay, here's when the assignments are due. Here's when I'm going to be grading the assignments. Here's where like we don't have class, or I don't know, something different. It's just to give like an overview of the course. So we can see the course from like kind of an overview perspective. And I found this really helpful for planning purposes, or if I need to like readjust something as the course was going on, this came in handy a lot. Also, when I was doing like course development or like trying to revamp a course, this was also helpful in like organizing, okay, like we're going to do these readings here. I'm going to switch these readings to this week, switch this assignment to that week. And so I found this helpful. There's the calendar view. There's also a board view by week of the course. And so you can see, when an assignment is due, when they're doing like an activity, if they don't have class a particular day, and like what weeks they pertain to. And I was on quarters when I taught. So what we'd have like 10 weeks in the template that I have available. There's space for up to 16 weeks. And obviously you can always add in your own, and including finals week. And then any notes that are associated with this course would show up here. You can also add new ones as they come up. And then any resources related to the course would show up here as well. And then I'll just show you what this third-year review, I'm not sure how much I have in there, what this would look like. So again, like the purpose and goal would go up here. And then I don't think I filled out much for this one. No, but anyways, so this is, it looks very similar to the research project one that we saw. So yeah, that is those are the buckets database and the projects database. So here we are in the to-do list database, and this was a database that I would spend a bit of time in if I was trying to kind of see a broad overview of my tasks. Though generally speaking, the main weekly dashboard usually captured what I needed during the week, but I might come in here if I wanted to see like some specifics about my different tasks. And so there's a bunch of different views here for the to-do list. So this first view is what I would use the most often. So it's to do by project. And this is also a view that is replicated on the main dashboard page. So it takes all of your projects and organizes the to-dos by project. So you've got here a third-year review project and all the tasks associated, a class, all the tasks associated, research project, and then anything that doesn't have a project or any task or to-do that doesn't have a project associated with it will go here. In the to-do view, this shows all of your tasks or to-dos that are not complete and not inactive. This is showing anything that is to do, I'm either waiting on, they're in progress, and they're not done, they're not inactive, and they're not on hold. All those things will show up here to kind of get a broad overview of like all the things that are potentially going to happen at some point in the foreseeable future. In terms of the different statuses that I would use, so anything that like I hadn't started yet would be tagged as not started. And anything that was I had started working on but hadn't finished would show up as in progress, I'd add the in progress status to that. Anything that I was waiting on for something from someone else, so say like I needed somebody to do some edits to a paper and then I was going to do something after that. So if I was waiting on that, I would add the waiting status. On hold, I see I would use differently than waiting. On hold would be a task that I thought I was going to do, and for some like whatever reason I can't do it anytime soon, so I like still want to do it, or still I'm planning on doing it, I just can't do it in the near future, so I put it on hold. So I kind of like I don't need to look at it for the foreseeable future, but I want to remember it, so that would go as on hold. Anything that is done would be categorized as done, or I would add that status to it. And inactive, I use inactive for any to-dos that I do kind of on a regular basis at some point during the term, but that I know that I'm not going to do for like another year or something. So for like a class, I would do the same things over and over again, like grade this paper or prep for this week or whatever it was. I didn't want to have to like keep recreating those to-dos. So I would just tag them as or change their status to inactive. So like once it was done for the year, for the term, change it to inactive. And then when I needed it again, the following year, or the following term, I would take off the inactive status and easily add those tasks back into that particular class or whatever project it was. The to-do board view just shows all of the tasks organized by status. So anything that is not started yet, anything that is in progress, and then anything that is waiting and we're waiting on will show up here. And then things that are hidden are inactive, done, and on hold. Anything that I'm waiting on would show up here in table view. Anything that's been completed would show up here, or inactive would also show up here, because technically it's inactive, it has been completed, just be done again at some point in the future. And then this shows all tasks, regardless of status or anything else, not organized in any particular way. So you can see everything that you have either are working on or will work on or have done. And then this is the same thing, but in a board view. So you can kind of easily move things or visualize like how many things are in a particular area. And then this one shows anything that is inactive. All right, so this is the resources database, and this would be where I would save any sort of resource that I came across that I thought might be helpful or that I wanted to save, make a note of, hold on to. I will say that I wouldn't, in terms of like articles, like saving PDFs of articles, I didn't necessarily save them here. I might make like a note of, like I had a resource of like articles related to X topic, and then I, in that particular resource page, would say like the citation or a link to it so that I could easily access it, but I wouldn't necessarily save the like actual PDF within Notion, just because I didn't find it necessary for me. But you can do that here because there's like a files and media area as well. But again, all of the resources you come across, you can dump them in here. You can assign them, like associate them with the project as well as a bucket and give them a tag if that's helpful. You can link them to different notes. You can link them to different areas of your research pipeline. And so this obviously like will look very different for different people, depending on kind of what kinds of things you come across. And then this is obviously across like teaching, research, service, whatever you happen to be involved in, will all go here. And then you could create views based on like, okay, here are the teaching resources I have, here are the research resources, etc. So this shows up in like a table view. This shows up also in a list view, just a little bit like with less visual clutter, but it shows you what bucket and project, and the project that it's associated with. And then there's also a view that organizes resources by bucket. Here is the notes database, and this is where I would input meeting notes if I was reading an article or book chapter or whatever, and they appear here in a list format. For me, I found that to be the most helpful format, again, like less visual clutter. But it does show the bucket and the project that the notes are associated with. And you could create more views that shows research notes, teaching notes, notes from a particular year if you use like a year tag or whatever. I do have some templates in here for particular notes. So there's meeting notes, there's research article notes, and there's an R&R template. And I'll show you examples of these. I think I have a little bit filled out, we'll see. So meeting notes, this template includes the meeting date and time. So whenever this thing was created, it'll show up there. And then a spot to put like what the topic of the meeting was about, who attended, a space for the notes, and the toggle list so that you can minimize it. They happen to be particularly long. There's also a space to put in any new to-dos that come up during the meeting. And so it's just an easy way to like, you don't have to navigate back to the to-do database or the front of the dashboard. You can just add in the to-do here by clicking on plus new, add in a new to-do, and it'll show up wherever you need it to. As you are in your meeting and you like, something comes up and you need to send an email, you can just add it here. And this will now show up on the front page of your dashboard so that when you're like looking at your dashboard again at the end of the day, you can send off a quick email if that's what needs to happen. And then there's also a space to enter in new research ideas that might come up during the meeting, and they'll get added into the idea section of your research pipeline. There's a space to add in new resources as well, just by clicking on the plus new button here. And then let's take a look at, but I'll show you really quickly that this syncs up with the front page. So if you go into the weekly dashboard again, you can see another new email that I just typed up appears here. All right, let's go back to the notes page and let's look at an R&R. Again, so these are just kind of like examples with nonsense text in there, but the R&R template, what I would use is like a table essentially to organize responses to revise and resubmits. And so there's a spot to put in like what reviewer number it was, what comment it was from that reviewer, what the comment was, what particular section of the paper it applied to, what page of the paper, who is going to, if there's multiple people on the paper, like who's going to address this, and what your like response is going to be, what the status of the revision is, and then any notes that go along with that. So I would find that to be like useful in just organizing R&Rs. So that is also an option here. Are there any other templates? Oh, research article notes. Show you this template as well. This is a space where you can take notes when you are reading research articles, so that kind of all captured in one space, and you can assign them to a project, connect a resource to it, put it in a bucket, I give it a tag if that's helpful. And so up here, just like basic information about the article, some detailed information. So for the purposes of like the template, I put in a bunch of different things that may or may not apply to what you are reading, but they're here. These are things that I would sometimes use, not use all the time, that may or may not be helpful to you. And then also a spot to put in your own thoughts and notes that came up while you were reading the article. And then similar to the meeting notes template, there's a space to add in any new to-dos that came up as you were reading the article, any new emails that you want to send off. And again, it's synced to whatever, when you last edited it. So if I delete this, say I like did it, and then I'm going to delete it, that will now go away from the synced block on the main page too. Any new research ideas, you can add them to your pipeline directly here. And any new resources that you want to add can be added there. Okay, and then the final database that has more like work content is the research pipeline database. And this shows you, I'm going to go into the board view first. It shows you like the different stages that your research or scholarly work may be at. So maybe it's something's in an idea phase, or these first three really have to do with proposals, whether that's funding or whether that's like a conference paper or whatnot. So things that are in draft form, proposals that are under review, things that have been accepted or funded. And then in terms of like actual research, we've got data collection, we've got data analysis, we've got drafting manuscripts, and we've got things that are like almost ready to go. They're beyond kind of this phase, but they're not quite ready to send out, would go in here. Things that are under review, things that have gotten a revise and resubmit, things that are under review from the R&R, things that are in press or published, and then things with no research status. So maybe something that like you've tried a bunch of times but hasn't gotten accepted might be in there, perhaps, as you try to figure out like how to repurpose it. So you could see this in the board view. You could also see this in a table view that shows you like the different aspects of it. So if you were to open up one of these things, you could enter in all that information that's in the table here and then add in any notes that might be helpful for you down here if you wanted to. So you can connect it to a bucket project, give it a tag if that's helpful, add in the full citation, any files or associated media, a URL, once it's published, the journal that it's going to, or the funding agency, or the conference. This will also show you the last time it was edited, date that it was submitted, the date of decision came, any like connected resources. So there's a lot to kind of organize and enter in here just to help you fully see what this particular piece of work is all about. And this, I think, can be helpful as all of this really, but this in particular can be really helpful when you're working on like your third year review, your tenure packet, just to kind of show what you've done, where you are, in a concise way, and help you see it so you can tell your colleagues about it. Okay, so the final database in my Notion setup is the tags database. And this is just mainly for organizational purposes of the tasks and projects and buckets. So especially for the to-do list, the tags this week and next week, as well as meeting, class, other event, conference, are all used to organize them in that front database where you see what I'm working on this week, what I'm working on next week. So these are tags that I am adding on a weekly basis so that Notion knows where to put those tasks in that front dashboard. And then Notion knows what is an event, whether it's a meeting, a class, another event, or conference, or what's just a task. And so it can delineate between or differentiate between things that are just tasks and things that are events. And then I would also find it helpful to add a year tag to things, just because with faculty role, you're, depending on kind of how your university works, you are doing an annual review, a third year review, your tenure review, and beyond. And so seeing kind of the things that you worked on, whether it's at the task level, the project level, or the bucket level, by year can be really helpful to show here's what I did this school year, here's what I did last school year, etc. I went through a phase where I used a few more tags, sometimes for tasks that I knew that were going to be really easy. I might tag that as an easy task. So if I wanted something to do but was feeling low energy, I could pick something from that list. I also sometimes would try and add a tag based on a type of work it was. So writing, editing, course prep. And I did that for a little bit, but it just never stuck for me. Maybe it will for you. So certainly something you could do with this, but these are kind of the main ones that I used. Okay, so that was an overview of the dashboard that I used as a faculty member. There's a lot to it, but I do want to walk through how to set it up in case you were interested in that. As I previously mentioned, I also have it available for purchase if you're nope, I like this, but I don't want to set it up on my own. I totally get that too. But yeah, hopefully something in there was helpful or sparked some oh, maybe I'll organize it this way or that way. And if you have any different ways that you use Notion as a faculty member, I would love to hear them. I always find it so interesting to take a look at or hear about how other people their systems and processes for doing their work.